Randy, thanks for joining us today. We had a conversation with you the other day, and we wanted to share some of that information with our constituents in SDAC. So, the first question we have is, tell us more about the Kansas Can 2.0.
Well, thanks, Steve and everyone. And hello, Soups. Sorry I can't be with you, but this is the next best thing. I want to digress on Kansas 2.0 and just tell you that this past weekend I finally convinced my family to go see Hidden Figures. They've been dragging me to all these other worthless movies, and I got to finally choose where we went. And so many layers of that, just an awesome movie, and I encourage everyone to go see it for a variety of reasons. But early in that movie, when the Soviets fire up their first cosmonaut, NASA just goes berserk, because I think the President of the United States went berserk and said, what? And there's this footage that they can't even launch a rocket. NASA can't launch a rocket. And here we're all worried about the Russians. And I was just thinking, I'm impatient. And I'm impatient whether I'm across the street, the legislature. I'm impatient with our agency, probably first and foremost, of how we can scale things up faster. And I'm impatient with the change that we're going to need to see. And so what I'm impatient with as we move into version 2.0 is that the change has to happen so that we can get better and in depth of what works. But if we don't make the change, we're never going to get to the next step, which is the deep processing. So we're moving from talking about the vision to implementing the vision. And that requires fundamental change in education. So I'm going to give you some code words that I think resonate with me. Whenever I hear on the kind of the politics trail, we'd like to put more money into the classroom. That's code for me for we're going to cut education. All right? When I go out and I speak and I hear people say, hey, I get it, Randy, really good. I don't know how we're going to do all these things. That's code for you don't get it yet. We're not going to be able to add on more and more to teachers' plates and principals' plates and superintendents. You guys and gals can't work any harder. There's no way to work any harder. And I'm not even sure of the old adage, we're going to work smarter. Well, I'm working harder, and I think I'm trying to work smarter. We're going to have to work differently. We're going to have to fundamentally think about why in any given school, as an example, somewhere between 5 and 20% of kids fail freshman English every year. And I was just talking to Kansas Teachers of the Year, and one of those great teachers is a freshman English teacher. Said she had 80-some freshmen, 4 failed. She gave 5 Ds because they did enough to get by. I said, why did they fail? And this is over and over again, because they didn't turn in the work. So they could do the work, they chose not to do the work and fail on purpose. And our answer to that in every community in this state is put them back in freshman English. Well, that's a small example of where we're not reaching all students. And if we keep doing what we've been doing, we'll be really good with 60, 70 in low social economic communities, maybe 80 to 90% of kids, but we'll never reach every kid. So we're moving to version 2.0. We're looking for people to be innovative. We're looking for people to look at their community, engage their community, and really get about now implementing the board's vision.
Randy,
I'm done. Good to see everyone. They're all going to eat Roy's barbecue now. Is that it? By the way, I wish I was there, because I bet we're having Roy's barbecue today.
Yeah, Heim's not going to be there, so no.
Oh.
I'm curious, and Steve, I'm going to jump in here real quick. I'm curious, what are some of the innovative practices that you're starting to see as you visit schools?
Well, I think, first of all, an acknowledgement that we're not serving every kid. If people will just acknowledge that, and if they will acknowledge, Tamara, that it's not the fault of the teacher or the principal or the superintendent or the school board,
Sure.
Right? It's not the fault that I think when we say that, teachers get really defensive, like, kidding me? Do you not think I care or work hard? I think more than anyone, I know you care and work hard. This is
Right.
not your fault. What is the fault is that the system doesn't resonate with every student. It does for most. And so what I see out there are some great thinking just about what we're going to have to do. You know, we see some project-based learning examples. You know, Schlegel High School, we had a group of teachers go to the principal and say, you know what, our graduation rate's not where it needs to be. How about you let us blow this thing up? And they and the principal said, let's go for it. I'll be a part with you. And they created a school within a school. Schlegel High School has about 180 students last time I checked. And they have them the entire day in a project-based environment. And, you know, they're learning as they go. And so if people say, well, I'm a little scared about experimenting, take the kids that aren't being successful today and blow it up for them. You don't have to blow it up for the 4.0 kid if you're scared, but if the kid's not being successful, then we ought to try something new. So let me give you some pillars that I think I'm asking questions about. And I think what's always interesting when we have this conversation is what is about compliance and what is about just doing what we think is right for students. Anything I say today is not about compliance. I'm not telling you the model. I'm asking you questions about what Kansan said they want in their schools and what research supports. For example, Kansan said that the most important thing we can do in schools is put a caring, highly intelligent, caring teacher in front of kids and have them work their wonders with students. If you look at the research from Ben Bloom in 1985, who said, what you need to foster immense talent, whether it's Tiger Woods in golf or a concert pianist or the greatest physicist on the earth, is not someone that knows more than that kid in that subject. It's a caring adult that fosters what their passion is. Now, later on in life, they're going to need some experts, right, to help them. But for a great part of their life, Ben Bloom said they don't need experts. They need someone that will help them find those resources and encourage their passion. Gallup research, it was just released this year, says caring is king. That's a quote from Gallup, not content. All right? Kansan said it. Ben Bloom said it. Gallup says it. So my question is, if caring is king and having a teacher who has that capability is what makes or breaks a school, why wouldn't we ask the question of why teachers aren't with students for more than 1 year or more than one period? Why is there first grade? Why is there a 50-minute block called American History that every junior goes through? And someone may give me all the reasons why we shouldn't do it. Maybe we shouldn't. But I'm just saying, Kansan said, go look at that. And all the research says what matters first is caring. And in high-risk communities where they don't have any stability in their life, maybe it might be good to have a caring adult in their life for 2 or 3 years. When I used to hire band directors or choir directors or debate coaches or football coaches, one of the first things the really successful ones always ask was, okay, after all the questions about their program, I remember Nick Griggs, who's a vocal music teacher in McPherson, and he's wonderful. Can I have access to the kids in the middle school? And then later on, hey, can we start it in 4th or 5th grade? Like he's a pain. Nick, you're a pain if you're listening, all right? And the reason was he wanted long-time relationships with those kids for a long time. They know that, right? So I'm giving you one example. Why shouldn't schools then be reorganized around that? I know all the reasons why, but if I'm in Fredonia or if I'm in Norton or if I'm in Newton, I think the staff ought to wrestle with that question about why are we organized around what we are when Kansan said do it differently and research says we ought to do it differently. That's one example.
Thank you.
You shouldn't ask me this question.
I think you mentioned, I appreciate you saying that, because not only thinking differently, but being number one, being very vulnerable to say, hey, we aren't meeting the needs of all kids. That's critical. It makes me think of that Black Box Thinking book, because, in education, we can protect and continue to protect practices because we don't want to look bad. And it does take vulnerability to create the change necessary to meet the needs of kids.
Now, let me tell you two things I think, and I can be convinced differently on any of this. Please understand that I'm open to any discussion about pushing the envelope on this. I think right now, for me, there are two discussions that you really want to be careful about having, because I remember changing grade cards. Tammy, you'll remember this. You go to a standards-based grade card, and I remember doing that at Concordia, and I remember doing that at McPherson. And as soon as you're done, there's great pressure to change it back to a grade. And eventually it changes back, and so I think there's two things that will get tremendous pressure on if we change too quickly. One are credits. We're talking about going from credits to competencies, which I'm all for. But if we think we're not going to have a credit system, we've got to change higher ed. We've got to change clearinghouse for athletes. We've got to change a lot of stuff. So what I think, and a lot of people will say, then we can't do that because I don't control that. I don't know that we need to change credits. We need to change how you arrive at a credit, right? How you arrive at a credit right now is based upon some time of study in that academic content versus learning of competencies that someone signs off on. So I think credit, we may always have an Algebra 1 credit. How we arrive at that credit will be entirely different in Harrington than maybe at Salina South. So that's one. Second, I think while we blow up school for some kids, we have to offer the traditional school for some others, or some of our most successful parents and students will be upset that we're not offering a traditional education. So I think choice happens within a school environment. That if I'm in Nickerson, I don't have to go to another school to be high-tech high. I can be in a project-based environment all day. I can be in an online environment all day. I can even be in a traditional 7-period day all day at Nickerson High School, or I can be in some blended of that, and I get to choose because that's my choice. And then I'll deliver that with the staff that we have and make it work for you and how we put that together. I couple that with my business community is going to come in and offer job shadowing and experts within the field. So while I encourage them, I've got experts that know what I'm talking about. And I'm also going to reach out to all my service organizations like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H, and churches. And I'm going to learn the competencies that kids learn when they go on a youth mission trip or they're working on an Eagle Scout. And I'm going to match those competencies or those standards with the Kansas standards. And then we're going to have teachers sign off when kids learn that in different ways. And they're going to get to choose the path. So I think if a kid, Tamara, I think if your kid comes, and says, hey, don't mess with me. I'm a 4.0 student. I like going 50 minutes and taking tests. I'm really good at it. Then that's good, right? This is your education. We're going to deliver that. But just you've got some other models that you may want to look at also. It's your decision. And I think that's where I look and see something like most likely to succeed, which is high-tech high. And I look at charter schools, whether I'm a traditional Latin charter school. We create these schools that are single purpose. And if you're in a large enough place like Chicago, you can have enough of them, I guess. You can choose which one you go to. But in Kansas, what do you do in Dighton, Kansas? What do you do in Independence, Kansas? You've got one school. So let's create choice within the school and let's allow students and parents to do what they want to do. Now, that's mind-boggling. But the video, that I show every time I go out now, at the very end about moonshot thinking, it ends with the rocket going to the moon, and the scientist says, when Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon, what inspired us all were not only his words, but the fact we didn't know how to do it. And that should send chills down everyone's spine. We don't know exactly how to do it, but I have full confidence that the people in this room that's listening to this, superintendents and principals, we have the best and the brightest. We're not duds. I've been in some other states. They're a little weak in some other states with leadership. We're not. All right, we're not. We've got great people. James Regier, what he's thinking about doing at Whitewater Remington's phenomenal. We could go on and on. So we can do this. We just aren't going to dictate one model from the state as we go about doing it.
Randy, that's a great transition. You know, when Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon, but he said we're going to go from here to there by the end of the decade. What's that look like with our accreditation? And, you know, the state board has bought the National Student Clearinghouse data for us now. What's that connection there between the two?
Well, Steve, first of all, I've always thought this is a 10-year journey. But I also think that the models have to get out there, right? I mean, Mercury, the Mercury program had to launch Alan Shepard into suborbit, right? We had to know we could put something in and drop them. But if you go watch Hidden Figures, when John Glenn got ready to go into orbit, they were in a panic because all their calculations didn't work on getting Glenn back to Earth. It only worked before you went into weightlessness and had to re-enter the atmosphere. So it's going to take us a while, but we've got to get started. And so I'm encouraging those schools that are thinking about it. Look at Ness City. Look at what Derek and that staff and some of those teachers are doing at Ness City. All right, small school, right? Look at Steve Wolf at Erie. You know, there's some great examples that are in small schools. And I could go on and on. I don't want to leave anyone out. So there's some great examples going on. But where this is going to be tied to accreditation is for the last several years, you simply went in and checked a box of assurances. And every superintendent principal knew, I better check yes, because if I check no, we gave you a phone call and said, well, oh, how can we help? Which, you know, was kind of code for you're not doing this very well. So everyone was checking yes. And then the only other thing we tracked was your math and reading scores. And as long as you were showing growth and proceeding toward AYP targets of 100%, you were good. Oh, that changes. So what drives us of the 5 outcomes is simple. Every student ought to graduate high school. All right, 86% do in Kansas today. Every student ought to graduate high school. But you can game that system so easy. As a high school principal, Mike Cook knew how to game that system. He just gets on the intercom and announces, come to the gym, we're awarding diplomas today, and I'm going to hit 100% because I'm going to look good. So you couple that with, can 70 to 75% of those kids that graduate or don't go on to some level of post-secondary success? Not every kid needs that. We can come back to that, but most kids do. That's our target. That's when we know we land on the moon. I've got almost 100% of my kids, or I do have 100% graduating, and 75% are either in the military, they're in a technical school, they've completed a credential, or they're on their way to be the next greatest engineer that Kansas ever produced. And if we hit that, we have changed the lives of students, we've changed the trajectory of the Kansas economy, and we've hit the moon. Now, I haven't looked at every school's National Clearinghouse data, but I've looked at a lot of it. I haven't found any school that can take the 9th grade cohort and hit 75% 7 months out. I haven't found any. There may be some out there. I'm not saying they're not. We have a lot of students, or a lot of schools hit 100% graduation. And we have a lot of students, or schools that have 80, 90% go off somewhere post-secondary, but boy, they don't finish. They don't complete anything. So that's where we're going. The accreditation model will hold people accountable to that, and then have you look at the other R's about how do you go about getting more rigor if you need to have more rigorous courses for kids to do that, or having a more responsive culture, or having more relationships, which we just talked about earlier. That's where the other R's come in, is helping drive your discussions about why you're not achieving those outcomes to the level that you want to achieve. And then we get away from just tracking the 3rd grade reading scores and watching people drive a test score at the exclusion of all the other things that they need to be to have success.
Randy, is the accreditation process going to look at that success data for each school? And is the assumption that over time, schools should do a better job at helping kids succeed post-secondary?
Yes. Yes. And I will also say, we're saying 70 to 75% because that's what the research says the job market out there is. But if you're not going to go on post-secondary, I want to even see a more detailed plan of your success, right? What is your plan to go out there and be successful after high school? If it's not you're not going to Washburn Tech to be a diesel mechanic, then what is it? Because when I was talking to the Kansas Association of School Boards in December, I've always used the example that there are some good paying jobs, great paying jobs, and really good career jobs that do not require something beyond a high school. And I use the oil refinery in McPherson as an example. And one of the engineers came up to me and said, stop doing that. Stop using that as an example. And I said, well, why? It's true. And he said, kinda. One, we have fewer and fewer jobs that only require a high school education out at the refinery. And two, 400 to 500 applicants for every one of those jobs. So the odds of a kid getting one of those jobs is extremely slim. So while we have them, don't promise all kids from high school, all you have to do is graduate high school and go get one of those jobs, because you're 1 in 400 or 1 in 500. So if a kid says, I plan to be a homemaker and I just want to take care of a family, okay, great plan. How would you go about taking care of the kids that you're going to raise the best? Maybe you ought to have some skills and talents to do that, right? What would they look like? Design for every kid that purpose. Most kids are going to do post-secondary, graduate from high school. We want to see growth over time in that. We're not, it's not an AYP target, so we're not trying to artificially inflate it. We're trying to genuinely come up with that. And then we're looking at the other R's to help drive the process that does for us.
Randy, I think you've answered my questions. Tamara, do you have others?
Nope. I think you've answered ours.
No, I have none. Thank you.
Randy, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm just sorry I can't be there with the group, but we're going to be out talking about Vision 2.0. I was talking to Jay Scott today and Brad, and said right now, today, the thing that I'm most proud of is how far we've moved individual plans of study in that discussion. I mean, just think how far that's moved in a short period of time, and so we're trying to use that model and say, can we scale like social and emotional learning, in a little bit same model, so we can move the field faster. Not that we're perfect about individual plans of study, but we're implementing, and then from there we can get more perfect, right? You can't get more perfect till you start. And so it's great to watch people implement that, and we'll have over 225 school districts probably by the start of next year using career cruising. So we think, okay, we must have done something right in helping drive the cost of that down. Yep. And we're only going to get better now, in how we help every kid succeed. So I want to thank everyone. I know the journey can be frustrating. Again, I encourage everyone, go watch Hidden Figures and watch the tension in NASA when they scream at each other, because they don't know, right? They're the best and the brightest in the room, and they don't know, or they know they don't have enough time to do it. It's imperative that we can't wait. The class of 17 is going to graduate. Are we going to wait till the class of 25 before we get started? Let's get started, and let's see if we can't start narrowing the number of kids that aren't being successful. So you guys are doing great work. Continue all your efforts.
Randy, thanks so much for your time today, and stay in touch. Good luck.
Okay. See you guys.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it.